Building and Facilities Construction Committee meeting of Wednesday, May 29th, 2019 will now come to order at 7 p.m. The only person absent at this time is Sean, and he may join us if he can possibly get away from his project. So, first item on the agenda, library. Library director's request. Bill?
In your packet, I had included an email from Justin Snook. Actually, it was a letter, and it had some drawings that are attached to it regarding an addition to the rear of the library building. So, you know, I'm not going to get into too much of that. Justin's here. He can certainly speak to it.
Okay. Justin, would you like to join us at the table?
Sure. So we've been trying to update the library some recently, and with the Green Communities Compact money, we got the weatherization, we got hyperheat installed. We are about to get the windows painted. As soon as the painter has time, it's happening. And we're getting a security system installed, and we'd like to revisit the concept of moving forward to making the library more accessible and opening up more space on kind of a better budget. The project that the historical project, we kind of want to move on from it. None of us think it's likely that the town is ever going to want to spend $2.5 million to renovate the library, and quite frankly, we don't think it's necessary to do that. Those plans involve a lot of rearranging the interior, replacing walls with windows, and the truth is we have a really nice library on the first floor. We have a basement that would be ready to be public space with just paint and plaster. What we're lacking is a restroom and an elevator. Those are the two main parts. And so the first part we want to address is putting in an elevator. So Aaron Sokrat, who's the owner of Douglas Orchard and Farms, member of board and committees, he volunteered to come in and give the library a look over. We spent about 4 hours just going through, looking at everything, examining, different ways that we could, accomplish opening it up without undoing anything that's already in it, without, basically making it as minimally invasive as possible. If it's not broke, don't fix it, just add what we need. And so he came up with this design, which y'all have, which is basically putting a small addition in the back of the library where the fire escape currently is. And instead of grading the ground down where you would enter on one level and have an elevator going up, this addition would sit at the current grade. So grading wouldn't be necessary, and you would walk in this door and you'd be confronted with stairs that you could either, go half a flight down into the children's area or half a flight up into the main area. And the elevator would have, 2.5 stops. So you could get in the elevator from this level through one door, and there would be another door on the other side of the elevator that could spit you out either on the second floor or in the basement. He estimates, his best guess is that we could accomplish this for less than $200,000. And so what I am asking you guys for is approval to move forward with this, because I know that we currently have, technically the big, huge renovation is still an active plan, and kind of some hand-holding, because I've never done anything like this before, and I want to get these plans as shelf and shovel ready as possible before October, because I want to have a really strong application with the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities around this fall. We've applied for that before, but we haven't really applied for it with, a shovel-ready project. So what steps do I need to take? What are the requirements for schematics? Are we going to run into any triggers? what is, you know, this is y'all's arena. So A, I'm seeking approval, and B, I'm seeking advice.
Okay, thank you. Ginger?
I guess I missed something. Tell me who Aaron is.
Aaron Sokrat, he, Douglas Orchard and Farm, he manages that, and he's also an architect.
That's the piece.
That's, yeah.
And where is he an architect?
He was in Natick before he was here.
Does he have his own business? Or
I
is he doing this?
think he's
out of the
retired.
goodness of
I'm
his
honestly
heart?
not sure. He just did this out of the goodness of his heart. They're trying to become involved in the community. They moved in not long ago, took over the farm, trying to build up, you know, stuff there. They're having concerts, and the farmers market is moving there. And
For
he's
1 year.
for 1 year, and he's interested in the library.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions?
Yeah.
Linda?
How about the restrooms?
The
Not yet?
restrooms we would want to pursue as a separate project. I did confirm with the Architectural Access Board that we can put in a single unisex restroom without a, what's the word, without a variance. Because we won't have any other restrooms. We currently have one public restroom. At the end of the project, you know, we would have one public restroom. We're thinking it would make sense to put it in where the boiler room currently is, because with the hyperheat units, we don't need a boiler anywhere near that size anymore. We could make do with, you know, a tankless hybrid unit of some sort, and then turn that into restroom space since it's already piped and plumbed. And, you know, Aaron estimated that that's a project that would probably run around $30,000, and we could easily raise that money.
But not at this time.
Well, we want to try to do things one step at a time, rather than bundle it together. Take care of one piece and then take care of the other piece. That way, if we have like the elevator project and the restroom project separate, then we have like one project we can apply for a grant for and say, you know, this is what this is funding for, rather than, okay, now we've added this additional cost, lumped it all in together. It's contingent on other sources of funding.
And that would be handicap accessible once the elevator's in.
Yes, once the elevator is in, once the restroom is in, the building will be ADA compliant.
Thank you.
Sure. Mike, do you have?
Oh, you can
anything?
ask
Go ahead.
first, that's
Okay.
fine.
Go ahead.
So the elevator is where the addition is going to be? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, so
So the
basically,
addition is for the elevator?
the addition is strictly for the elevator and some stairs as well.
So we're gonna get an elevator in the bathroom?
No,
That's what we're
bathroom, the
saying.
second part.
No, I'm sorry, that's right, so only an elevator.
Only an elevator.
Okay.
Mike?
Are there any exterior improvements proposed?
Not in this. This is literally just building this box, sticking in the elevator and stairs in
So
it.
someone
and
with
so
a
that we have
disability
access.
would have to get from the parking lot or the sidewalk to the addition over a gravel drive?
Yeah, well, we would assume they would park back there if they're coming in a car. If they're pedestrians, then their options will either be to go around the building through where the elevator entrance is or up the main
I'm not
stairs.
sure that's ADA compliant.
So what would we need to do to,
I think you should talk to Aaron about that.
Yeah.
Well,
that
if you
was
got
good.
somebody with a wheelchair, then I got it.
Okay.
That was part of the question. Did Aaron do a code review of anything? Or did he just make the schematic of the floor plan?
he just made these sketches.
Okay.
He
So-
said that any further steps.
Right. Alluding to what Bill was talking about, you're gonna need to do some sort of code review to make sure that you're compliant in all these different things. You're gonna trigger a bunch of little things for this accessibility, not only getting in and out of the building, but getting to it. That'll be a problem for you. The exterior of the building, you thinking clapboards on it?
Yeah, just cheap, basically wood.
Just for economics?
Mm-hmm.
Another question. On Aaron's guess of the 200,000 for the addition, 30,000 for the bathroom, was he thinking prevailing wage or just ballpark
That was
pricing?
what he was thinking it would be with prevailing wage. That said, he did give the caveat, he hasn't done like a municipal project. I think he's only done one municipal project.
Yeah, what I'm comparing it to is, remember at the capital committee, I talked about that elevator shaft that I quoted for a
Mhm.
project out in Shrewsbury. I was a little over $100,000, and that's private. So this is a lot larger than what I was proposing out there. So you may be a little conservative on your guess, that's all.
Okay.
Adam may be a little more helpful because he's more familiar with prevailing wages, more than I am, because I don't get involved in them.
Okay. Ginger, you have another question? No?
No.
Linda?
It's a good start.
Bill?
Yeah, Justin, about a year ago, you had talked to Charlie Van Voris, the architect that did the original design for the expansion. I think he did some scope for you to supplement a grant request.
Mhm. It was basically the same grant. We were applying for the Mass Mod grant back then, and we approached him since he's the architect who had worked with us currently, and he proposed cutting a hole in the first floor and putting in like a loo lift. And he said that we could accomplish for $250,000.
Okay, so he did this work, and you used that to apply for a grant?
We did not get the grant.
You did not get the grant. So what's wrong with that concept? Now, I haven't looked closely at that concept, but if that's money that you applied towards a scenario, what's the issue there?
We weren't happy with the concept once we got it back, because we were hoping that within the scope of the grant, he would be able to give us plans that would have an exterior lift, not sacrificing what we currently have in terms of usable space. Because, I mean, the first floor of the library currently is really our only usable space. The basement, we have the programming room, but, other than that, it's not finished. And if we cut a hole in that, we lose a room, and we lose the programming room underneath it. That wasn't seen as viable by anybody. We went ahead and applied for the grant anyway on the off chance we would get the funding, and then we could maybe, retroactively do something. But, we don't want to use those plans for any future projects that we do
And
with the library.
what was the value of that?
What did we pay for it?
No.
No, the cost of the job.
The cost of the job.
He estimated the cost of that job, I think, around $280.
Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm done.
And that just reaffirms my point about getting an accurate cost, because you just talked about an internal lift. That's 80,000 more than what an exterior addition would be. And there's a big difference between the two jobs, and the cost is much greater on the smaller job. So I'd be a little concerned that you might be conservative on that addition, being at that rate.
I do have a question. So, did he give you any kind of an estimate as to final drawings, how much that would cost?
He said final drawings would probably cost around $9,000.
For him to do?
He said that's what he would expect someone to charge, but he doesn't want to do it because he's busy. He was happy to do this for us, but if we continue with the project, he wants us to go to someone else for the final drawings.
Anybody else?
I just don't see the point of doing this when the library's too small to start with. We don't have that much space in the library.
Well, they need accessibility to it.
Yeah.
I personally think he's going in the right direction. He just needs to figure out what's gonna work and have a realistic number to be able to sell it to
I
whoever.
agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your plan to move forward, assuming this seems like a good approach?
That's what I was here to ask you guys. What should my plan be moving forward?
Now, I have another question. Has the library board approved this?
Yes.
Oh, Sean, come on down.
Sean,
I apologize.
He's been hanging out in the hallway, I
I
think.
have, actually.
what a guy.
I
Do
believe
you-
the expression is
I'll,
coward.
give-
No, no,
Oh, no, you have to finish the task that you have in front of you.
absolutely.
You almost.
Your,
are.
these here. Yep. Thanks for getting that. I just feel uncomfortable that, things are kinda, well, maybe so much for this and possibly so much for that, and I personally couldn't move forward to recommend it to the selectmen unless I had some definite figures. You know, we keep spending money on proposals. I mean, I think we're, again, I know at one time it was up around 90,000, and then years have gone by, and now I think it's around another 40,000. And we come up with nothing. So we need to get locked in here with what it really is gonna be to present to the people. And personally, I can't,
Well, for the record, we're not seeking town money to do this. We're hoping to fund it exclusively from grants, donations, and private accounts.
But we still.
And I,
we still have to, it's a public building.
Right.
And I think we still have to give if we're gonna recommend it, which is our job of recommending a project to the selectmen, not a definite decision on our part, it's a recommendation. And,
Because it has to be built to code, it's got to
Yeah.
have fire stuff in it
Yeah.
and all that. It's not just an elevator and a stairwell.
Shirley,
yes,
it's their expectation that we do all the hard work. We're little foot soldiers.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets to them, it should be accurate and correct.
Yeah, so that's, what I'm asking is how do I get there from here? Aaron gave me sketches, how do I, what's the next step to getting where y'all want to be?
so what you just said to us is you're not asking for any town money even to do the proposal of the project.
Correct.
Bill,
Well,
suggestions?
I would offer a few things. As you indicated, Shirley, we did lay out some cash and had a master plan, let's call it, for lack of a better term. If we deviate from the master plan, that's fine. I would suggest that we get a phased approach, and so we approach an end game in a logical way,
Mhm.
and we're not just kind of picking at pieces
As we go along, yeah.
as things
Agreed.
come up and, people have concerns. I think there needs to be a plan laid out, and if the overall scope is 2.5 million, as Justin indicated, then we break it into smaller pieces that are more manageable and attainable. I think that's part of the goal here, is you want something attainable.
Mhm.
But you're not gonna lay something out as part of this concept that's gonna have to be redone as part of the next step.
Right,
And
yep.
that master plan, I think, is key to that end. The sacrifice you make when you approach things in a phased manner, they do cost more. Okay?
True.
So you could take on the whole project, and although it's a large cost, if you phase it, ultimately it will be a more expensive venture. So, those are things that, as the project proponent, you have to think about. But I think if there's a series of steps or projects that you're anticipating, I think that needs to be thought about as part of one master plan, and then you phase your approach for each project. I think that makes the most sense. This might be a good first step. I agree that you need code compliance issues looked at. To me, it doesn't make sense to invest this kind of money if you can't get from the parking lot to this point. I think you have to approach it in that manner also, that, you know, people accessing the building need to get there, and then once they get to that point, they need to get into the building, and then the bathrooms, and, you know, maybe that logical approach makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's worth thinking about. And then costing, I agree with Mike. You have to look at code compliance to make sure that while you've got an architect and Aaron's great, I work closely with Aaron on a number of things. I'm not certain of what his background is, if it's municipal work. But there are factors that might be overlooked if you don't have someone that does that sort of thing, public access. So you want to make sure you get the right person to cost this out and make sure we're complying with the statutes that fall on the town. So that we're not planning on doing something that's not necessarily correct.
Efficient.
Code compliant. So those things, I think, need to be considered. So I think the first step in the process is you need to think about the scope of what you want, and then solicit proposals from an architect that would be appropriate for what you're looking to do, and then approach it in a phased step approach. That's my recommendation. That's what I think makes sense.
Anybody comments on Bill's,
I agree with Bill.
Mike?
I agree with everything that Bill said, but I think I understood Justin to say that that master plan, for lack of a better term, wasn't the direction in which the library was thinking of going now, that they were comfortable with what the size of the building was. They were trying to make accessibility to it at this point.
But still, I think it's, again, what's the long-range plan here?
Correct, yeah.
So,
In
Ginger?
other words, that's gonna satisfy the needs of this town for the next 50 or 100 years, your plan? Is that what we're saying?
It has in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's completely
And
potential.
but that's
to do
not
so.
correct. It doesn't satify the needs of this town, and you know that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's your opinion.
No, that's true. You go to any other town and look at a decent library.
Well,
If we
Okay, one at a
have a
time.
renovated basement and upstairs space, we will have more usable space than any of the comparably sized towns in the Blackstone Valley, with the exception of Grafton, because they are getting a renovation right now. But, you know, we have the first floor space. Tacking on an elevator doubles our usable space, because we have the entire basement now opened up to public accessibility. I mean, what I'm sensing here, what I'm getting is, you know, I need to go do more due diligence. I need to get a code review. What I'm not hearing is, how do I do that?
Let's take a step back. When Derlin Van Voris was contracted with the town to do the project, they did scoping, they did programmatic analysis, and all of this is in the reports that they generated. So a lot of that legwork, in my opinion, has already been done and gone through under that contract. If that's still consistent in what the library has for their needs, then that information can be packaged and presented to another architect, which, you know, again, soliciting proposals. I think the scope of what you want to do needs to be first discussed and agreed upon. That's really what you're talking about, Justin. Once that comes from the trustees,
Well, our scope is clear. We want to do an elevator addition, then we want to do a restroom, then we want to renovate the basement in phases.
Is that consistent with what was discussed a few years ago with the architect?
With
Charlie.
Charlie, like when I applied for the Massachusetts
No.
Office on Disabilities
No.
last year?
No, this is before you were here.
Before you came.
No, it's not consistent with that scope at all. Because that scope entailed basically gutting the inside of the building and rebuilding it with more lines of sight, more visibility, adding the elevator on the outside, building a parking lot, adding 3 handicap accessible restrooms. I mean, it was a huge,
It was a
Project.
handicap accessible project. That's what the scope was.
it was a handicap accessible project, but it was also adding a lot. It was adding a lot of, frills that we don't necessarily need. Such as it had 2 more handicap accessible restrooms than we want. It had a huge elevator addition on the back. It had grading the ground in the back to add the big parking lot that would meet in with the other, the parking lots next to us. It had, removing some of the internal walls and replacing them with glass so that you could see outside. Touching up all of the interior paint and, it's just it was it was taking care of a lot of maintenance issues as well as getting the accessibility. I mean, it was supposed to be the whole package. You do this, and then the library.
So I feel like we're reinventing the wheel, because we did go through this. The library trustees and the director participated in our meetings a number of years ago when we went through this process.
And what you have is a project that when the last time we paid $10,000 to have the cost estimates updated was $2.3 million.
That might be, yeah.
That, was that the one where we asked Charlie to cut down the size? Because I thought we went back with the library board to have him reevaluate, to come in with a smaller package, and that's the package we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. That's in the ballpark of what my recollection is
Right.
on the value.
Right.
But my point is, the scope and the discussion that was thoroughly discussed with the trustees was what was presented and finalized. So to take that, which is money that was spent, and discard it with that wholesale, without properly seeing that, there might be salvageable components perhaps, I don't know. I don't know. To me, it seems like we're going back and retooling something that's already been done.
Mike?
Is this guy Charlie still around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you spoken to him about what your,
I've chatted with him numerous times, but he's an architect that builds very, very pretty, fancy things.
yeah,
That's not what we need.
no, but what you need to talk to him about is occupancy alone will dictate how many toilets you need. So it's not a case of what you want, it's what's required. You're gonna have to have a certain amount of toilets per number of females, per number of males, and now I guess we got a new group. But that's all dictated in charts, so you can't just say, I want 3 bathrooms, or the architect, well, I think you need 3 bathrooms. He's going by what's required on occupancy.
Well, in the last iterations of the plans, we actually had him pare it down to 1 public restroom. That was with the plans that had the hole, digging the hole.
Okay.
Well, basically, am I hearing the recommendation is that perhaps getting a couple of architects to come in and evaluate it, or talk to Charlie again?
I think we need a lot more
Because
information.
this is a sketch, but as Bill mentioned, just to get from the parking lot to the building is part of the handicap situation. Mike?
Have you showed the sketch to Charlie at all, just to get his opinion?
No, I haven't chatted with Charlie since
Yeah.
we did the.
And I'm not trying to
the
throw
previous
Charlie
plan.
into it, I'm trying to help you, we get to some common ground, but maybe you could talk to him and get his opinion, see if he would be interested in just looking at it and seeing if it makes sense, if it
I don't
fits.
think we can afford him,
To talk to him?
right? I mean.
Oh, could you
he-
ask him? Well, you could ask him.
No,
a question,
or to draw up plans like we're.
No, I'm not asking him to draw anything up, but just, I'm trying to help you get to a common spot, because you have a big set of plans that were drawn.
Yeah.
You're trying to scale it back down.
And it was scaled down once.
Right.
But here we are again, so it's gotta be somebody to make it legal and compliant.
And I
You've
think
gotta
that,
talk
and I
to
think that's
somebody.
what Justin's his goal is to try to make it, legal and
Mhm.
something that he could actually sell and get done.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as everybody said in the last few minutes, that you've just been going around and around and around, making all these plans and everything else, and you're getting nowhere. And now here he comes up with this, and he's like, no, you can't do that either. So, I'm just
Yeah,
trying to put suggestions out there to try
I
to
think we
get,
all are.
I think.
To help
I think,
Justin get to that
you're
point.
asking us what you should do next, and we're suggesting what you should do next.
You've gotta have some help.
To get an art,
To talk to Charlie, maybe. You don't have to turn it into a big brouhaha, to just have a conversation with him.
My experience with Charlie has been pretty good, where
Mm-hmm.
he'd be willing to take a look at something like this
Mhm.
and give you his feedback informally, not a thorough review, but just provide feedback on it.
It's the beginning.
And maybe you could take that feedback and tailor a scope for soliciting some architects to do something. I think it'd be a good first step.
Well, I'll email him and see if he can look at them, and are we seeking his approval, his blessing? Like,
No, no,
what
no.
am I asking?
No, no,
for?
no, no.
Feedback,
Not at all.
You're
feedback.
looking for feedback, right.
he's already
Informal
done
feedback.
all the research,
Mhm.
Justin, so
Yeah.
if you go talk to him, he doesn't have to dig into it, he already knows the building intimately.
So he can answer these questions about code reviews and.
He's already done all
phased
that.
approach and all
He's
that
already
stuff.
done all that, so if you show him how you wanna downgrade it and talk to him honestly what your long-term goal is, I'm not saying, to provide books for the next 50 years, but the environment's changing as far as you're concerned, because if you go back 50 years ago, we didn't have Google, so
Right.
you didn't have Kindles and all this other stuff, so his needs are getting smaller than some of these huge libraries that they've built in the past.
I don't agree with that, by the way, but that's okay.
What, Kindle books?
No, I agree with the Kindle books, but the library needs are not getting smaller. Libraries are being used more and more all the time. They're the intellectual center of the town now, the
Yeah.
community center of the town, and we're not really doing anything to make sure that that continues to happen down the road. And
Well,
I
I
think,
think we're doing a lot to make sure it continues down the road.
Well, this is
We're trying
Ginger
to improve it.
expressing her opinion, and
But I think this is a positive step forward for the library to, at least, you're engaging in conversation and trying to come up with a positive solution that works.
I totally
You're-
agree
You're
with
at 10,
that.
yeah,
we'll take the 230,000, you're at 10% of the proposed giant thing, so you gotta figure out where you are in between the big plan and the little plan. I think the 200,000 is a little conservative, because you have somebody else telling you it's 280 to put a lift on the inside. I did a project that's a little over 100,000 that I proposed, so I think the 200, looking at that would be, I think I would be over 200,000 looking at this if I bid it in a private sector. Only because of what I would have to do to make it work. So, I honestly think you might wanna talk to, just ask Charlie, it's not gonna cost nothing just to talk to him. If he shoots you down, then you go somewhere else.
He's
but
pretty reasonable. I think you'll have
I
no problem.
think, yeah, and especially with today's economy so busy, he doesn't have to worry about getting every job. He might be, maybe feeling generous that day.
I think he got the job in Charlton, didn't he, for their safety complex?
Oh, possible.
Could be, but I mean, you just have to talk to somebody that's familiar with this. You just can't, you know.
I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. I'm happy to see that there's some progress. There's nothing I would like better than to see this library grow and prosper. Because I think libraries are the intellectual center of the community, and it's important that they be taken care of. But I think we need to see a little more information.
So I should go to
Sean?
Charlie for that information and bring it back.
So
I would-
We're
And
saying
I'm
have
happy
a
to, I'm
discussion
happy to
with him.
participate,
Okay.
Justin.
Sean?
Okay.
First of all, I'm walking in late,
Yeah.
of course, which
Yeah.
means I'm gonna say things that have already been said,
No?
and I apologize in
That's
advance.
fine.
So just so I understand, there's presently a plan proposed by Mr. Socrete, is that correct? And Mr. Socrete is on the planning board?
Yeah.
He is,
He is.
yes,
So he works for the town.
he does.
That does not create any type of an issue in terms of the bidding? to
This
have
was a schematic as a courtesy he provided to the trustees
No cost.
with no cost. It was just, this is a concept. That's it. That's the level. He's not planning on bidding on his services or bidding or preparing detailed plans and specifications. It's just kind of like, here's a concept for you to consider.
And the intention is to submit an application to the granting authority for the Office of Disabilities for the FY '20. Is that safe to say?
Yes, that was what I was hoping, was we would get a shovel-ready project ready to present by October.
And in terms of the amount of money that's being requested, is the amount radically different than the proposal that we had previously done with Mr. Van Voorhees, or do you not know, and it's fair enough to not know? So I
The
don't
maximum
know.
dispersal is $250,000.
So the maximum amount of grant, I apologize, the maximum amount the grant could possibly be is for $250,000?
Yes.
And the remainder would have to be paid for by the town?
Yes, but the goal is to, whatever we do, keep it under that amount.
But what you said was that it was going to be private donations, you hoped.
That's
No.
for next phases in the project. We were hoping to present to the Massachusetts Office on Disabilities a grant proposal for an elevator as,
Right.
the first step in our phase.
Right.
Which we should
Understand that.
follow with other stuff. The restrooms and then sidewalks if they're necessary.
No,
and
Shirley, he
whatnot.
just said that he was gonna get enough money from them to do this project, to keep it within that cost, so that the town wouldn't have to pay anything.
Okay.
That's the way
But
I understood it.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I was hearing,
It was not our dime.
donations.
No, he didn't say that.
Okay, my mistake. Yes.
On grants, do you have to do any matching on that?
It depends on the grant.
Oh.
So Sean, you have any other questions on that?
No, I just, in terms of the portion of the project that was already evaluated by Van Voorhees,
Yep.
does the portion that's relevant to this application come above $250,000, as far as you know, in terms of a review of that project?
That's
You
what we
know.
don't know yet.
You don't know. So,
You know.
So for clarity, Sean, you keep talking about Charlie's plan. This is not the same concept as Charlie's plan.
no, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just clarifying that for you.
Well, it just seems to me that the goal presently is to get the monies through the grant process.
Yes.
And if we have an existing report with multiple phases and multiple costs that the town expended, I believe, $50,000 for, I could be wrong.
90?
90,000.
Well, no, 90 was not just one proposal, I think it was others.
Okay.
But since that time, I believe there's now like 45,000 that's been expended for proposals.
But the portions of that completed work would not be sufficient to submit for the grant information? Or you wouldn't feel comfortable doing that because it's too broad?
It's completely different.
No, I understand that it's different, but for
Well, you
what's
already
being
got a-
described, it sounds
yeah.
like there's being phases described. For instance, there's putting on the elevator, and then
Yeah.
there was glass walls and other
Yes.
things that would be removed from the project.
Correct.
But would the existing information in that report, in terms of
Mhm.
installing an elevator, be sufficient for the purposes of the application of the of the grant monies. And you're saying to me, you don't know that, and that's,
Well, they wouldn't, because
They would
this
not.
involves putting the elevator in an entirely different spot.
okay. So it would be completely different.
It would be completely different.
Okay. Again, I apologize for walking it
Yeah.
away.
Thank you.
I know, that's fine. We've only been through like, what, 4 different iterations of library plans in the last 10 years?
At least.
At least,
Anyone else?
Gone from, what,
Comments?
7.5 million to 2.5 million. 250,000.
Well, that's different scopes. You're not,
Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
talking
you can't-
apples and
you can't
apples
say
here,
that.
Justin.
Yeah,
That's not
There's no
fair.
comparison,
Right.
really.
so that, if I, and I apologize.
Yeah.
So there's presently not existing funding available to retain somebody to propose, to put together the new set of plans needed to submit the application. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
There's
or
no
did I say
money
it
for an
wrong?
architect right now.
There's no money for an architect.
That would have to be secured either through your grant or.
Or through the trustees.
You
Yeah.
can't do that, that'd be putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
No, but we have,
Ellie, would you
Follow
like
through
to
on-
come to the table and
no,
see?
no, I wanted Justin to pop in there that
But I
it
have
was.
to make sure that the people listening or watching this program knows who's recommending this.
Okay,
So
I'm
if you
just
give your
telling Justin
name-
to respond to you, you know.
The trustees have funds to pay for architectural plans, drawings, whatnot.
Yeah, so let's talk about the van.
In my opinion, I think that's the first step. You need to talk
Yep.
to a professional, whether or not it's Charlie. I think there's value in Charlie where he's gone through the building and prepared plans and
Yep.
done studies and done scoping for the program and understands the project. Maybe his scope and direction needs to be modified,
Mhm.
but I think there's value there.
Mhm.
Aside from having a new architect come up to speed and have to learn all of that.
That's
So-
more of an expense.
Logically, it probably would be, yeah.
And if you're trying to do it by October, it's also a time killer.
Mhm.
I mean, we're only saying this to be helpful, not to be difficult. We're saying that Charlie might be able to give some assistance. It's probably not going to be the final.
If you're looking,
arbiter of this.
if you're looking for shovel-ready, you need drawings to present with a valid cost estimate.
Even to apply for the grant.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If that's what he needs for his
Yeah.
grant application,
Yeah.
he needs drawings with a valid cost estimate. And if you're looking for getting that done by October, I mean, if we go out for soliciting RFPs for architects, there's a screening process, you're talking months for that.
Mhm.
Then the work occurs, and then the final product. Again, that again reinforces the fact that if you continue with the architect you have, there's value in time that's already there,
Right.
that doesn't have to be recreated.
So if I talked to Charlie
Mhm.
and he says, you know, he gives us recommendations, what's the next step from there? Like, what can I do?
Well, if the trustees agree, you can contract with him to do the scope that you want to do.
So first is scope.
You need to agree. First, you want to give him that drawing and say, is this realistic? Is this viable?
And then I get a scope. Is that like an
Then he'll give you
official
feedback.
thing?
Then you'll work with him on developing the scope. He'll give you a fee estimate, and then you'll proceed.
Yeah, I'm not clear on all the processes involved here, but I can email you about it later instead of
The
taking up
alternate,
time.
if you're looking for someone else, the alternate would be a competitive process where you do evaluations, where we'd assist you with that.
Mhm.
And you'd go through a selection process.
But you won't make October.
October would be
Yeah.
difficult.
Close.
Yeah.
That's only 4 months out.
And Charlie's already done the legwork,
So,
knows all the measurements and.
any other questions, comments? We all agree what Bill is recommending? Ginger?
Justin, how do you feel about that? I feel like you're still a little uneasy.
I'm happy to talk to Charlie and see what he has, to contribute to this, and go from there. We'll see what happens. I was hoping the process would be more simple, but the process is never as simple as I hope
No.
it'll be.
It would have been nice, I
Yeah.
agree.
I'm sorry.
It would have been very nice if it were that simple. but
I was like, well, we got sketches, I can bring them here, y'all can recommend, how to go out and get them turned into drawings so that I can submit a grant in October, but.
Yeah. As fate would have it.
There's all kinds of
Gotta be
requirements, and it
legal,
has
not
to
like the
be-
good old days.
Yeah, and then, sometimes the good old days worked, and sometimes,
The things fell apart, too.
yeah. All right, Mike,
Wanna do it
any last minute?
Still paying for the good old days.
Yes,
No, but the sooner you engage with Charlie, the better chance you'll have
We all
a
agree.
meeting then.
Sean?
No,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
you keep asking me questions, and I'm trying to remain silent tonight.
All right, I just want to give you the opportunity.
It sounded to me, and I probably misunderstood, that there is some source of income to hire an architect independent of town funding as a source of private donation from the trustees?
Yeah, the
Or did I
trustees have
misunderstand?
a building donations account, which people have donated to specifically for these kinds of projects.
Good.
So I'm gonna go talk to Charlie.
Unless you can think of somebody better.
I would love to
talk
participate in that too.
Okey doke.
Unless your own library board recommends something different.
I think that's your simplest path.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's already got the work
Yeah.
done.
Simplest, quickest, and he
Yeah.
understands the town, and he understands the dynamics, he understands the building.
Well, he understands the whole project to
Right.
start with, and all
He's
you're
been around
doing
and around
is
with us.
you're railing it in, making it a little smaller, and he's already done all the code review. He's gonna tell you whether or not you need paving to go from the main street all the way up the driveway and around the corner,
Right.
which most likely you would. It would probably be cheaper than making a sidewalk, because that's gonna be a ramp to get up over there, the little wall that you have there.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
alone, doing that driveway, what do you figure on that driveway, Adam, about 20 grand to do that parking lot?
Post office parking lot alone is 40, so yeah,
Yeah, so.
What, to pave it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't pave it because of the water
Well, you
system.
can, but then it'd be a more elaborate groundwater infiltration thing.
And it would, cost a lot.
And a permit process with the planning
Right, but
board.
that's the whole point is.
Yeah, that's part of the
The
whole
addition,
process.
it triggers all these different things, that's why I brought up the code review at the beginning.
Isn't that nice?
Okay,
Pretty
are we
good.
agreeable?
We're getting the windows painted.
Going back to that, that's good enough.
So that's big.
Good. Are we agreeable?
Yeah.
Yes.
I am, yeah.
Not that bad, Justin, it's just.
Thank you.
You
Thanks.
gotta put the effort into it, and
Yeah.
you'll get it.
Welcome to come
Thank
back
y'all.
anytime.
I think it's great that you're making the
I
effort.
think you're doing wonderful.
Oh, shoot.
This was y'all's pin, I don't wanna steal
All
it.
right.
Thanks again,
Justin,
Maria.
where are you from originally?
Arkansas.
Why did I know that?
Okay, back in order here. Green, the
Can I-
next
one
item.
question?
Yes.
Did you know Bill
Thank you.
Clinton? Wasn't he from Arkansas?
Yeah.
It's not part of the agenda.
Well, it was a question.
That's a fair
Item
question,
2,
Mike.
green energy. Bill?
Just to give everyone an update, we're still working off our designation grant for the streetlights. We just wrapped up the work, the physical work is done. Arden did some rewiring on some of the LED structures that, streetlights that did not have proper wiring. So once I get the invoice from that, which is expected the end of this month, I'll be able to close out that project in its entirety, thank God.
Yes.
Good for you.
So, but as of now, all the ones that failed and were out should have been repaired by now, so we should be in good shape. with regard to that.
Okay.
So that's that. We also did submit a competitive grant round, and you'll see the list of projects, which those links have the actual proposals that were submitted to DOER as part of our competitive grant application for funding. So those should be the forthcoming projects if they're awarded from the state. So if you
Will
wanna,
know.
if you wanna drill down, you can click on those links
I did.
and what I emailed out
Yep.
and read up on them.
Yep. And I forget, when are we getting notified?
Actually, you know, I'd be surprised if it isn't fairly soon,
Yeah.
because Kelly, the DOER rep for our region, contacted me with some questions maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we got her the answers, and so we're just waiting to hear back at this
Okay.
point.
Questions, anyone?
No, that's great. Finally, Milford.
All right.
Third item on the agenda,
Yep.
Badluck Pond Outlet Bridge, that's the Cedar Street Bridge.
Mhm.
As you know, we did get a grant from Mass DOT for $500,000 to replace that structure. We're moving forward with it. The current plan and approach is to replace the bridge with a four-sided box culvert. And that should improve the road width, the grades generally in that area, and basically have a more sound structure. You may recall, we worked on that bridge a few years ago.
Yes.
And just for background, that replacement was only temporary. Highway did the labor, Mass DOT provided the materials, we got the engineering done on a cheap budget. Mass DOT shut down the bridge for a period of time because it was deficient. So we basically got an okay to do this as a temporary repair previously. So that's why we applied for this grant process. The overall project on the outside end is going to be about $750,000. The balance, the difference there, the $250,000, the plan is to pay for that with Chapter 90 funds.
Right, remember that going to
Right.
capital.
So it shouldn't be any taxpayer
Yep.
capital costs from the town.
Yep. Questions?
Why does it have to be a four-sided box culvert instead of the three?
Ideally, we would do a 3. At that location, the cross-section of that structure itself, Linda, is not real conducive. Right now, it's not great. This is kind of mirroring what's there now for the
Okay.
least cost possible.
Okay.
We could do like an arch culvert and have banks and stuff like that, but the thing would be about 70 feet wide after you did that, because it's deep. There's a lot of
So a
flow that goes
three-sided
through. So
Wouldn't work?
a 3-sided would be more cost, and you'd still have scouring and erosion issues, which we're trying to avoid.
All right.
Anyone else? Okay, good. When do you think that's gonna start?
We actually just got the agreement with the state last week, and we
Okay.
issued a notice to proceed to our designer early this week, so.
Okay,
So they're moving forward on the design at this point.
good. All right, item 4 is the municipal fire alarm.
Yeah, this one and the next one, the municipal gym windows, I haven't moved forward on these. I know Adam's anxious for me to move forward on it, because he has nothing better to do.
It seems like they've been around for a while.
I'm just as at fault because the way things are so busy right now, I haven't honestly been on it. You know, we have the PD windows and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just, they're all up in the air and trying to get going on them.
So we do have funding for those 2 projects.
Yes.
It's just a matter of really defining the scope and putting it out to bid. It's just we haven't had the time to do it.
But you
Okay.
will.
We will.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna keep it as a placeholder on the agenda until we
Yeah.
start moving forward on it.
Good,
So we don't forget about it.
right.
Cool.
All right, police department windows.
Police department windows, we did contract with GRLA to your, everyone's joy and happiness.
And
And I did already get my first invoice, and I'm reviewing that. We also did have a link to drawings, which I did forward out under separate email, I believe, to everybody.
Okay.
So it's not under this link yet, I didn't have a chance to put it in that section.
Okay.
But we did get drawings, draft drawings from the architect that I forwarded
Yes.
prior to our last meeting
Yeah.
that
I
we didn't have a
remember now.
quorum on.
Yep. Oops, thanks.
So, I don't know if you want to talk to that at all, Adam?
The only thing I've had discussion with GRLA on was some of the windows on the side, with the men's locker room, and the lockers come up so far, because they were wondering why they were shorter than the other ones on the side
Sure.
of the Sally's Port. That's the only discussion I've had, and I sent pictures over to them, this is what happened, and they came out and investigated too. So that's been all it's been so far. Everything else, they've been just doing at their place, I guess. I
So,
haven't seen
so
it.
they're in a current position of waiting for feedback from us on those draft drawings. So once we get feedback, so if anybody has any comments on what they've submitted, give me that feedback. Let's say, I'll respond to them the beginning of next week. So I'll give you till then to get me feedback. If I don't hear from you, I'll just tell them they look good.
Okay. Anyone? Questions, comments?
No.
Great. We're down to minutes.
Yep.
No minutes for January 16th because there was no quorum. So we have minutes of February 20th, 2019.
Was this one page?
Yeah, a page, side and a half. You want this?
Oh, I got it.
Right, Adam?
Good night. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve, sorry,
That's okay,
the
doesn't matter.
meeting minutes of February 20th, 2019 as submitted.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
So Winter, motion, and Ginger, second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? So moved. Upcoming meetings, January 16th, 2019, there was no quorum. March 20th, 2019, those are all gone by with. I don't know why they're on here.
Good question.
So, and we have future topics, important information, the IG procurement charts, which I believe you've given us, and bulletin designer selection, and the decam instructions for calculating designer's fees.
Yeah,
Any
but-
other issues that have not been anticipated in the past 48 hours? Anyone?
Did you see the back of this?
Oops. Sorry, thank
That-
you, Jim.
Those links are just for your information. I
Local
carry,
designer selection, yep.
carry
practical guide.
those on all our agendas. We should at some point update our local designer selection procedures due to new thresholds
Yep.
that the AIG has put out. So we will do so at some point.
Very good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Mike, motion, and Linda, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourning at 7:59.
59.
Thank you, everybody.